Hi everybody, this is Miss Josie, and now it's time for writing. Today for writing, we're going to be talking about storytelling. We will even write our own stories. First, I'm going to read this story called The Raven. This is a Native American story that was told through storytelling and then became a book. So first we will read a story, then we will talk more about storytelling. The title of this story is The Raven, and the author, or the person who wrote the story, is Gerald McDermott. Raven, a trickster tale from the Pacific Northwest. Raven came. All the world was in darkness. The sky above was in darkness. The waters below were in darkness. Men and women lived in the dark and cold. Raven was sad for them. He said, "I will search for light." Raven flew across valleys and across mountains. He flew along rivers and over lakes. There was darkness all around. Then he saw a bit of light far away. He flew and came closer to the light. The light was at the edge of the water. The light came from the house of the Sky Chief, and it was shining. Raven perched high in a pine tree on the shore. Raven watched. He saw a beautiful young girl emerge from the shining house and go to the edge of the water. She was the Sky Chief's daughter. She knelt and drank some water from a woven basket. Raven changed himself into a pine needle. He fell down from the tree and floated on the water. When the girl drank again, she swallowed the pine needle. After a time, the girl gave birth to a child. The child was small and dark with shiny black hair and tiny black eyes. Who do you think the child was? It was Raven. Raven had been reborn as a boy child. The Sky Chief was delighted with his daughter's child. He called him grandchild. He played with the boy and carved toys for him. He invited the elders to come and see the curious, wonderful child. The elders gathered in the shining house with the Sky Chief and his daughter. They watched the raven child crawl around the floor of the lodge. He pretended to be playing. All the time, he was trying to find where the light was hidden. He saw a box in the corner of the lodge. The box was large. It was carved and painted with many colors. The box was bright. It glowed. Raven said, "Gaga." "What do you want?" asked his mother. Raven child said, "Gaga." He began to cry. "What does the child want?" asked the elders. Raven child said, "Gaga." He cried and cried. "My grandchild wants the box," said the Sky Chief. The young woman placed the box in front of Ravenchild, but he continued to cry. She took the lid off the box. Inside was a smaller box. She took the lid off that box. Inside was a smaller box. His mother took the lid off that box and light poured out of it. Light flooded the room. Inside the box was a shining ball blazing with light. What do you think the ball was? It was the sun. "Give him the ball," said the Sky Chief. His mother gave Ravenchild the ball. Ravenchild stopped crying. He began to play with it. He rolled it around the floor of the lodge. Gaga. Then he changed into a bird. Ha ha. He became Raven once again. Caw, caw. Sky Chief, his daughter, and the elders looked on in amazement. Raven plucked up the ball of light in his beak, flew through the smoke hole of the lodge, and disappeared into the dark sky. Raven flew over the valleys and the mountains. He flew along the rivers and across the lakes. Raven threw the sun high in the sky, and it stayed there. This is how Raven stole the sun and gave it to all the people. And why do the people always feed Raven? To thank him for bringing them light. This story is a traditional Native American story. Traditional means it was told long time ago and has been told ever since. Now we're learning about Native American heritage and Native American culture. Many Native American tribes or communities tell stories like this one. Many Native American stories are about animals. We will be writing our own animal stories to celebrate Native American heritage or Native American culture. So, when we are writing our stories to celebrate storytelling, we need to remember the parts of a story. Some of the parts of a story we've talked about are characters, setting, theme, and conflict. So, before we write our stories, let's talk about the parts of a story. An introduction is how we start the story. There are many ways to start a story. There are many different introductions. Some choices that we could use are once upon a time, a long, long time ago, or one day. So those are just some examples of introductions or the start to a story. The characters are the people in the story. Who is in your story? The stories we write today will have animals as characters. The setting is where the story happens. A story might happen outside or in the Sky Chief's lodge, like the story we just read. The story could take place inside a house or at the park. Any place the story happens is its setting. Transitions help create a timeline in the story. A timeline helps you know what is happening when. So some transitions help with time. A transition might be next or then. It helps you know when things are happening or what order. Transitions are important to keep our story moving. You want your story to move through time. The conflict of a story is the problem. Most stories have a conflict. It's the problem that the characters need to fix. So the conflict in the story we just read was that it was so dark out that Raven needed to find the sun. The problem was the darkness. The theme of a story is the lesson we learn. What does the story teach us? In the stories we will write today, everyone's theme will be, it's okay to ask for help. So the theme is asking for help when you need it. That is a lesson that the story might give you. Actions are movements that characters do. So if your character moves or walks or swims or dances, those are all actions. Describing words are important because it gives more information to our story. It makes the story interesting. Describing words can describe anything, like people, places, objects, events. Anything that happens in a story can be described. Some describing words might be colors, like pink or brown, dark or light. Describing words can also be things like curly, fuzzy, hard, soft. There are so many describing words. The last piece of a story we'll talk about is the conclusion. The conclusion lets you know the story is all done. So some conclusions might be, and they lived happily ever after. That's one conclusion to let you know the story's over. Another conclusion could be the end. So these are our parts of a story. Now it's time to write your own story. Now it's time to write your own animal story. Cut out the cards of paper and match them onto the key. Your title will be Animal Story. Then add your name because you are the author. I wrote Miss Josie. Now you will need to choose an introduction. Cut out your introduction and glue it on the yellow rectangle. Next, choose your first character. Whatever character you choose, glue it to all the green rectangles that say character number 1. Now choose your setting. Your setting is where the story takes place. Choose a transition next. Remember, every time you see the box that says character 1, add the same character you already chose. Your conflict or the problem will be in the pink rectangle. Now choose your character number 2. This character number 2 will go in both boxes. Add a relation or how the characters are related. Next is action. Choose a movement for your characters to do in the story. Last is conclusion. How does your story end? Here is my story. Animal Story by Miss Josie. A long time ago, there was a red fox. The red fox lived in the forest. Unexpectedly, the red fox needed a friend, so the red fox asked Butterfly for help. Red Fox and Butterfly were friends. Then they told stories. They lived happily ever after. Last, fill out the information sheet about your story. Cut out the labels and glue them on the lines to tell more about your story. I hope you enjoyed writing your own animal story, and I will see you next time. Bye!